Hey, real quick, just a reminder to subscribe to the channel. That'd be great. Also, we're doing a live show in Atlanta, December 2nd, the Friday night before the SEC championship game, solidverballive.com. Link down there for tickets.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildenbrandt, that fine gentleman over there, as always, the ever illustrious Oregon fan extraordinaire, Dan Rubenstein, sir. How you doing today?
Better than I was doing at about 10:27 p.m. Central last night, but I got an okay night's sleep. I woke up to the news that UCLA had also lost in maybe worse fashion, given the opponent and the very end of that game. But no, there are a number of fan bases of quality teams, if not good teams, if not that good teams, that at least didn't even have the hope of winning a winnable game. I don't even know what's better anymore. All logic and rationale is out the window. I hate losing.
Yeah,
I do.
I feel it, man.
But,
I feel it. I can feel it coming off you here. You know, we do the Saturday naming thing every weekend, and I was thinking about it this morning. For me, it was so about that Saturday. So about what you thought of TCU. So about what maybe you thought of Oregon or UCLA or even Texas A&M. I mean, we're going to get into all of this.
And it's not always in a bad way, right? So whatever you thought about Texas's defense. So there are like good nuggets to take away. So about that Saturday. Yeah.
For sure. It was a brutal week of actual bets, capital A, capital B for me. I think I went 1-5-1 in actual dollar bets. I don't know if I did much better on locks or on the picks that we gave away in our week 11 preview podcast, but haven't been that bad in a long time, man. It was a weird week where stuff didn't fully make sense. We're going to do our best here over the next hour or so to help you make sense of it. Thank you for tuning in. We've got folks who are watching live on verballers.com. That is our Patreon. This episode, all of our episodes, of course, driven by our good friends over at Geico. And last but not least, we will talk in a little bit more detail about the game that is now set for the first weekend of December in Atlanta. But we will also be there December the 2nd. Dan and I doing a live show, Terminal West, going out to solidverballive.com or smelltieshair.com if you're truly a weirdo. Buy your tickets now because it's going to be a ton of fun.
Yep, absolutely.
So, with all that being said, as we want to walk through the things that happened in week 11, we'll get to your reverbs a little bit later on in the show. It was a particularly bad day for the Pac-12 with both Oregon and UCLA, two heavy favorites, both at home, going down. You did record the reaction video that we posted on YouTube, about 5 minutes long, where you go into painstaking detail about what went down with the Oregon defense in particular. I locked up Oregon in this game.
You did.
I thought that they were going to run away because I had no faith in the Washington defense, right? We talked about that ad nauseum, how we saw the numbers. We didn't trust the numbers. It cut both ways, though, on Saturday. When I picked this game, I looked at the numbers and I said, Michael Penix could have a really good game. He's got that in him here. The numbers would dictate that he could throw and have a really good day against an Oregon defense that isn't particularly great against the pass. But I didn't pick Washington because it's like Oregon feels like they've got the wind at their back. Oregon feels as if they are trending in the right direction. Oregon seems as if now ascending in the playoff rankings, they've got so much to play for. There's no way, no how they're going to have a hard time moving the ball against Washington. What happened, Dan?
You kind of nailed all of the peripheral elements that caused what happened. It was a bunch of small moments. Because that's what it's going to come down to when Michael Penix, major game Mike, I don't know. When you look at the biggest games he played in Indiana against Ohio State, Penn State, and he definitely had some down games, but against Michigan State with a lot of people watching earlier in the season, but that game was in Seattle. On the road, Washington has not been good as they have been at home. And they rose to the occasion and floated out of the stadium with a win, albeit probably to some of its fans, improbably, after what Oregon was able to do on the ground, gashing the Husky defense late in that game to set up, I think, what would have been, if Oregon, in a different universe, punched it in for, would it have been a 38-27 lead at that moment? I believe that's what it would have come down to. No, it was the fumble deep in the Washington red zone early when Oregon went to sort of like a trick formation, but then came together to run some sort of power. That was there for a touchdown, but a fumble from, I think it was off Bo Nix's knee on the snap, turns that over. And just all 3rd and 5 running Bo Nix up the gut, which was not a bad call considering what Oregon had been doing to Washington on the ground. But I highlighted this in the video I did. They, I think, went from 12 minutes down to 4 minutes with the ball. It was something like a 9-minute drive, 20 plays, 19 plays, somewhere in there, where they were just ripping off 5 to 7 yards a run. And they were bringing in different running backs. Bo Nix was running the ball, and Washington was just getting shoved to the pylons, essentially. And it's all well and good, but like we like to talk about on this show, there's a reason why explosive plays are more effective than a highly efficient offense. Because highly efficient offenses take more plays to march down the field, and more plays means more room for error. And that means penalties. That means blown assignments. That means somebody tipping a ball that shouldn't have been tipped, or like just mistakes. College kids make mistakes. And I appreciate the strategy. I appreciate the aggression, the onside kick. I appreciate the aggression on 4th down, even deep in their territory, because if that's what gets you there, you keep doing it. You don't abandon the successes you have over the course of the season just because it's risky in that moment or it's a higher leverage moment. If you feel comfortable doing it and the numbers are okay with it in the back of your play card or whatever, you do it. It's a process thing. It's not a results thing to me. But you got to win those high leverage moments if you have a bunch of them. And you cannot stop the other offense. And this is where I shift my attention to Michael Penix, who made throws across the field that 7 quarterbacks maybe in college football can make because of the arm strength and accuracy with that kind of arm strength. Washington's receivers were pinpoint in the routes that they ran in their hands. They ran the ball well, but why run the ball for 7 yards a carry when you can throw the ball for 11 yards an attempt? So I thought Washington's strategy on offense was sound. I thought Michael Penix made one egregious mistake in throwing the ball into the teeth of the Oregon defense in the red zone, which resulted in a tip and interception. But by and large, Washington was a perfect example of, look, you're not doing everything great. The defense is getting absolutely gashed, but do enough to hang around and draft behind the opportunity truck, because sometimes weird stuff happens. And as an Oregon fan, as a college football fan, we're all used to our teams losing in very dumb, silly ways. Yeah. Oregon has done it as a highly ranked team in these last few years, so maybe it's fresher on people's minds, Oregon losing in dumb, silly ways. But I think ultimately, Oregon does not have a defense to win a game like this very often. And with no pass rush, with the type of soft cushions that the secondary, and understandably so, that they were giving the Washington offense, they were playing to get field goals and red zone stops and tips and mistakes. And that can work a lot of the time when you have that kind of offense. But again, the margin for error then becomes razor thin if you can't get off the field at all. And that's what it ultimately came down to. And Oregon's defense was able to be masked by a killer offense against some not good teams thus far after the Georgia game. But Washington's offense is good enough. And their defense is not that good, but their offense is good enough to draft off that opportunity truck, making big plays downfield. And so good for Washington. I think they break a 5-year losing streak, and good for the Pac-12 in terms of added depth at or near the top of the conference. And look, if you're a Washington fan, you have to be encouraged by what the future holds at this point, provided Kalen DeBoer can keep finding Michael Penix's Penai?
I guess would be the plural.
Yeah. So that's my evaluation of the game. I don't fault Dan Lanning for being aggressive. There was a weird call at the end of the game, but if you need weird calls to go your way, that means you're not good enough to win a game anyway. So I hope Bo Nix is okay. I hope Alex Forsyth is okay, the starting center, the all-conference, if not all-American caliber center that Oregon has. I think Oregon's a really, really good team, and they will finish in the top 15 and probably go to a significant bowl game.
Yeah, Michael Penix, by the way, just to put it in context, 408 through the air and 2 touchdowns.
Killer.
Oregon, for their part, did move the ball on Washington. It was not like they were stymied. They ran for 312 and 2 touchdowns on the ground. I mean, there was a lot of offense in this game. The final score was 37-34 in favor of Washington. But look, I come back to what you just said. Incredible win for Washington on the road. A team that we had some doubts about. I think that a lot of people did as well, particularly with the defense. The offense hasn't so much been in question as has been maybe the consistency of it with Michael Penix as the trigger man. He was sensational in this game. He was really, really good.
Yeah. No, it was little moments for Oregon and big moments for Washington. That's what it came down to. Washington rose to the occasion. Oregon beat up on the offensive line. You got that bad snap, which sets them back a down essentially, but a heady play by Bo Nix to spike it down to not take a loss there. But tough, absolutely tough loss, but absolutely thrilling win if you're a Washington fan, for sure.
Yeah, elsewhere in the Pac-12, by the way, this was a later game. Arizona knocked off UCLA. What a win.
Another top 15 team, yep.
For the Wildcats, 34-28. It was the Jaden Delores show. A good day through the air.
Yeah.
But I don't think the numbers fully reflect the impact he had just by being mobile in the pocket, by scrambling around, by, in a sense, doing a little bit of a Bryce Young buying time until his guys can get open. I did get specific notes of UCLA trying to stop Bo Nix as I watched parts of this game.
Sure.
In fact, both Jaden DeLaura and Bo Nix against UCLA were 22 of 28 passing.
Oh, there it is.
So there was some odd symmetry there. UCLA just seemed off on offense. They were 4 of 12 on third downs. Mm-hmm. For what it's worth, they did have a run at this thing to win it late. A long pass. DTR had Jake Bobo streaking across the back of the end zone right along the end line. Just could not get it to him. Threw it like a step or two too far. Jake Bobo laid out, but couldn't bring it in inbounds. That would have been the go-ahead score as time expired. Talk about a thrilling way to close this thing out. But look, to your point of building depth in the Pac-12, maybe not great in terms of the immediate playoff conversation, but bigger picture, Arizona winning here. Arizona presumably moving in a good direction under Jed Fish is a good thing. Arizona, I don't know if they'll get to bowl eligibility. It seems like still kind of a stretch, but the fact that we are going into week 12 talking about, okay, if they beat Wazoo and Arizona State, Arizona could go to a bowl. That's not a bad place to be, given the depths that this program has fallen to over the last 5 years or so.
No, we had talked about Arizona in the preseason, then we'll move on to wherever, the Big Ten, SEC, ACC, Big 12. A 3-win season with signs of growth and explosion would be pretty successful. The fact that they're already at 4, the fact that they just went into a top 15 place in UCLA and won that game with exciting offense, with Jacob Cowing, the running game is going. You mentioned Jaden DeLaura, and really it's the defense getting enough stops and the offense coming out of the gate, and they typically do this. They're very fast starters, Arizona is, which speaks to game planning and, an understanding from the offense in terms of execution that they're ready to put points up as soon as the game begins. And that's a good sign for things to come for Jed Fish and the Cats.
Big win for Arizona. UCLA, by the way, has USC next week. I don't know if there was any kind of look ahead situation going on here, but UCLA definitely seemed a little bit off. Okay.
Yeah. By the way, Zach Charbonnet still ran for like 190 yards, right?
Yeah, he still had 198. Still looked good, was healthy. That was good to see. It wasn't as if this was the 85 Bears on defense for Arizona. They gave up points, they gave up yards, but in the end, they get the win.
It's great.
Let's go to the TCU-Texas game, Dan.
Let's.
So 17-10 was the final score here in favor of...
Sorry. It's a weird habit. It's a tick. Continue.
In favor of the Horned Frogs. This was, I thought, a super important win for TCU on a couple levels, some of which are very obvious, others maybe not as much, but by winning, they clinch a spot in the Big 12 championship game, which in any universe for a first-year head coach and Sonny Dykes, first year at TCU, I should say, head coach Sonny Dykes, huge dub, right? Huge dub. Go back to the Big 12 championship game is like a big deal for TCU. So good for them on that front. They're 10-0. They've obviously got an inside track to the playoffs, given where they stood coming into this week. That's part of why this was such a big game. The manner in which they won this game, I think, gives them another dimension when we have these discussions about who deserves, quote unquote, deserves to be in the playoff and who doesn't. TCU had not played in/won a game like this all year, because before this quote unquote sloppy win, what was the sloppiest win they had? 43-40 in a comeback effort over Oklahoma State.
Right. Overtime. Yeah.
There were aspects of this game that were a full-on clunker to a much, much different level, where the defense had to step up. They had to keep the offense in the game, give them opportunities until they could start to put some of those big plays together and figure it out the way that they have all season. That is kind of what happened here. Eventually, TCU finds a way to get a big play. Kendry Miller rips off a 75-yard touchdown run. Late in the third quarter, they get some separation. That made it, I believe, 10-0. And then from that point forward, TCU was kind of able to go into more cruise control and pull away a little bit more. But for all the hype surrounding this game, I thought TCU did a really good job of acquitting itself well on the road, playing a different style of football in order to win. I know my hunch is that you may disagree with some of the way I've characterized this game for TCU.
Right.
But I just thought it was different in the manner that they conducted their business here. And as we get deeper into this thing now, and as people will undoubtedly want to doubt TCU, to see them win a game like this, a low-scoring, almost defensive-minded game, it's new and on some level kind of comforting.
A TCU for a new generation.
That's right.
The shame of this outcome, not that TCU won, the shame of this outcome is we are already going to, as everybody, going to look at it through the lens of the college football playoff. And we're going to say, well, TCU won with good defense, and usually they win with good offense, but it is worrisome that on a big stage, they started the game 3-and-out, 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 punt, 4. Well, that kind of thing, where this was a really ugly offensive affair. Flip side, both defenses came to play. There was an energy throughout. It seemed both of these defenses, especially Texas up front, all of a sudden they decided to field an NFL defensive line.
Yeah, where'd that come from?
That was new. And so both offenses were pretty horrific to watch, and quarterbacks were being hounded, and Quinn Ewers threw a pretty bad interception into double coverage in that first half, and Max Duggan couldn't get anything going. And I don't think Texas even scored an offensive touchdown over the course of the game.
3 points. There's 3 offensive points in this game.
Yeah, they had a scoop and score later on to make it, on the scoreboard at least, a game. But if we're just looking at this through like, oh, how's TCU's 2022 going? Like, incredible, perfect, no notes. But now we look at it and say, well, they usually, and it's through the playoff, and it's saying like, well, if they do this against Georgia, if this is what they do against Texas and their defense, what are they going to look like against Ohio State or Georgia? And that's the sort of fallacy of college football conversation around these times, is that we can't just sort of agree to enjoy something good. It has to be like, well, they're not great.
Well, I can enjoy it.
I know you can,
I can enjoy it, and I don't think we need to go to that playoff discussion right away. I mean, let's keep it within the context of the Big 12. The Big 12 is nuts. The Big 12 is a snow globe every weekend. Mm-hmm. Every weekend, we have no idea who is going to win a game. And that was, I think, again, the case in Week 11. We'll get to the rest of the Big 12 in a little bit here. But, so the fact that TCU remains pretty much the only consistent entity in that conference is a big deal for them and that football program. It's obviously a big deal for Sonny Dykes. It's a big deal for the kids who are on the roster, who have been on the roster for a good long time now.
Yeah.
And I think it's a big deal, especially as we project forward, not just into the playoffs, but for what the Big 12 looks like after Texas, after Oklahoma leave.
Yeah.
TCU is setting itself up pretty well in that kind of new power structure, right? So
of course,
this is all gravy for the Horned Frogs. On the Texas side, though, I know you bring up the defense, but there's probably some meat to the argument at this point that Quinn Ewers has just been lousy over the last, 5 games now.
Yeah, we've sort of danced around that thought, but yeah.
I mean, we got to have that conversation at some point. This was a big deal, this game, not just for TCU, but game day was in town. Texas was favored by 7, lest we forget. To go out there and essentially lay an egg on offense was not a good look. And look, I'll do credit to TCU's defense. We've talked about their secondary before, how they've had their moments and are probably a bit underrated. 3 offensive points in this game at night. Come on.
Yeah, I think, did Texas Tech just score 24? West Virginia scored 31? Look, every game is different. Every game is its own special gift. But something's broken in Austin, and it rhymes with schmoffense. If Bijan Robinson can't get loose at all, if you can't find ways to creatively get Bijan Rubenstein? Yeah.
Bijan Rubenstein.
That's my dream.
That's going to be your third son.
Bijan Robinson, the ball creatively. Xavier Worthy, the ball creatively. And look, I am positive there were ways. And I am positive that it was an execution thing, probably more often than not. But your job as a head coach that's offensively minded and an offensive staff is you got to teach. You got to teach, and you got to coddle to a certain extent in a good way. And you have to make sure you are designing things to be understood and executed by the right person. And so maybe Quinn Ewers is, maybe he isn't, maybe Hudson Card isn't, maybe any of the quarterbacks on this roster are or are not the right guy. But with game day in town, with talent everywhere on the field, with an improved offensive line, with a defense that is looking better than usual, but first of all, missing their best playmaker up front, right? He was suspended. Yep. D. Winters. Let me make sure I get that name right. But nothing. Couldn't string together a drive. And to be fair, it was not a busted play. It was an incredible run from Kendre Miller, the 75-yard run. And it was busted coverage, but Quentin Johnston is still man enough to leap over people and catch touchdown catches. But it was basically 3 or 4 mistakes from the Texas defense that led to points for TCU. They played well enough to comfortably win on defense. Yeah, and they are just broken on schmoffense.
By the way, speaking of design, whatever happened to Steve Sarkisian's pregame suit, however that thing came into existence.
Boogie Nights. Yeah.
Sure what that was. All right, moving on. Alabama 30, Ole Miss 24. This is a game, wasn't it?
A weird one, but yes, it was good.
30-24, again, your final. Alabama beats Ole Miss. I had two big takeaways. Takeaways. I won't rifle through all the stats here. You don't care. I mean, it doesn't play to audio. I know that. But the two big things to me that jumped out and going back and rewatching and watching the highlights from this game. Alabama, as if we didn't already know this, but Alabama this season is going to go as far as Bryce Young can single-handedly take them.
Yes.
And that's it. That's Alabama's story this season.
The Bryce Young radio flyer. Yeah.
Yeah, in a year where he has been nicked up, where he doesn't have the same caliber go-to threats out wide, in games where the running game isn't always to the level that we've seen in recent years for Alabama, that they are capped by whatever Bryce Young can do. In this game, he was good. He didn't have eye-popping numbers.
Capped by?
I don't mean like
they're
pop
ceiling.
a cap in. I'm saying they've got a ceiling.
No. Yeah. It's just the way you frame it almost makes it sound mistakenly, because I know what you mean. That like, well, he has a pretty low ceiling, so whatever he can do is good.
He's a reigning Heisman Trophy winner.
Right.
But they are only going to be able to go as far as he can single-handedly take them. And he was good enough in this game, right? Yeah. I mean, especially in the second half. Again, a lot of the scrambling around stuff, buying time, finding open receivers. He's very good at that. Sometimes it helps Alabama. Sometimes it can be, as we saw in the game, I guess last week, it can be sometimes a curse. But nonetheless, Bryce Young pretty good in this one, had 3 touchdowns and was definitely the primary weapon for Alabama, as he has been all season. Secondly, though, Ole Miss on the ground, man. They ran right at Alabama, and they had a lot of success doing it. Especially on that last drive. They have like a minute left. They're running up the middle. Quinshon Judkins. I mean, like, incredible. And then there were moments where they just stopped running, which you and I were writing back and forth. Like, why are they stopping this? They're so good at it.
An incredible strategy by Alabama to let Quinshon Judkins run so much that he's tired and has to take a few breaths on the sideline, and thus can't in huge moments. Because I think he had a 35-yard run near the end of the game when Ole Miss was driving for the win. And he was just exhausted, and understandably so. Weird game. In terms of the rhythm that Ole Miss did and then didn't have, they were really coming after Bryce Young. They were really swarming the Alabama offense. They shut him down early on. They go up 10-0, 17-7. Zach Evans gets hurt. There's the fumble. Like, the the back and forth nature of this game swung pretty quickly. And then Ole Miss decided to be a little bit less aggressive, it seemed, on defense in the second half. But then when they were driving for things, it seemed like they were back into a rhythm. And then once they get into the red zone, it's, all right, Jackson Dart, drop back and win it for us. Like, what? What happened now?
Exactly.
It was, and look, it could be the Judkins being exhausted thing. It could be Zach Evans being hurt thing. But they've got good receivers. They have a creative play caller. And look, Alabama's still really good, and they've got great edge rushers. But it seemed that what was working for Ole Miss in terms of tempo and creativity was abandoned a little bit in those high leverage moments at the end.
Well, I mean, I thought a pretty good game. One of the better games of the day. We had a lot of games like the next one I'm going to discuss that were very rock fighty. But Alabama knocks off Ole Miss in part because of that victory. It clinches a share of the SEC West for LSU.
Yes.
So LSU, for their part, speaking of rock fights, 13-10 over Arkansas. So LSU, here's where things stand for LSU and Brian Kelly. LSU has clinched a share of the SEC West, but because they own the tiebreaker over Alabama, primarily over Alabama, they will be headed to that SEC title game December 3rd, excuse me, the day after our live show in Atlanta.
SolidVerbalLive.com.
Against Georgia. So we'll talk about that game. I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to discuss it. But in this one, at least, LSU, I mean, this is a miserable offensive game on both sides. In part because KJ Jefferson was out on the Arkansas side. He was ruled out shortly before kickoff. The line popped. I saw it went up to 5, maybe even higher at kickoff. But Malik Hornsby got the start for the Hogs. Eventually, he gets yanked. Without KJ Jefferson, basically, the Raheem Sanders thing was kind of a no-go. Because he became the primary focal point for the opposing defense. That plan was kind of dead in the water. So only about 250 yards for the Hogs in this one. Other than a 40-yard pass to Matt Landers, a lot of pickleball. It was a lot of short stuff, not really able to extend the field. Not to say that LSU did a whole lot of that either. They weren't a whole lot better. Jaden Daniels threw for a total of 86 yards and a pick. He was sacked 7 times.
Yeah.
Josh Williams was, I guess, the main offensive weapon on the ground. He ran for $122 and a touchdown. But the star of the show really was your boy, our guy, Harry Perkey.
Harold Perkins, already one of the best players, defensive players in college football. Watching him line up and then watching the quarterback try and find him. What must have been going through, whether it was Malik Hornsby, the utter fear. Oh, I'll scramble away. No. Oh, I'll hold on to the ball and make sure I don't. No. I won't let him sack me. I'll throw it. No. Harold Perkins is a problem. LSU does not have a problem when it comes to young edge linebacking play.
No.
And he's everywhere. He's going to line up everywhere. He is going to be somebody I apologize for not using the proper attribution here. Somebody called him Jacked Honey Badger. If you want to think about how scary that is as a true freshman. Yeah.
For those not familiar, it's Harold Perkins. We call him Harry Perkey on this show.
Very
freshman linebacker. Apparently had the flu and was puking before this game. Jeez. But still finished with 8 tackles, 4 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. Which ain't bad. bad. I saw, was it Brian Kelly referred to him as Michael Jordan? Maybe there was like a flu game reference in there.
Yeah, he said, he was like, it was MJ. He said, I told Harold it was like your MJ flu game. Yeah. And his response was, who's MJ? Woo! Woo!
Good one.
I'm 114 years old now.
Good one.
Yeah, just super heady. And the awareness seems to be pretty off the charts for a freshman. And decision-making, I mean, as I said, decommitted from Texas A&M. So you knew right away. Sharp. It's got good something going up top. Yeah.
Good recognition. LSU going to the SEC title game. What conference you want to head to next, Dan?
Well, it's a question of whether or not you want to talk about Will Howard or Talia Tonga-Vailoa and Spencer Petras? It's up to you.
Why don't we talk about the Big 12 real quick?
You want to talk about Ja'Carri Brown? Miami?
We'll get to Ja'Carri Brown.
Okay.
Let's close out the Big 12 because I compared it to a snow globe earlier. We had some interesting results. We had West Virginia 23, Oklahoma 20. We had Oklahoma State 20, Iowa State 14. We had Texas Tech 43-28 over Kansas. And Kansas State 31-3.
Did you lock up Baylor?
I locked up Baylor. It was a spite
again?
lock. 31-3.
Yeah.
Over Baylor. Which of those games was of interest to you or most interest to you?
I mean, I think Kansas State is likely to be playing TCU at this point in the big. They're probably the odds-on favorite at this point to play TCU. I don't think it's locked up because they still have, I believe, Kansas and West Virginia left, if memory serves. So I would say likely is accurate. It's an absolute complete performance from Kansas State. An absolute complete performance from the Cats. Baylor has been a team that has shown improvement over the course of this year. What did I call it? Second Act Saturday or something like that?
Yeah, Second Chance Saturday.
Second Chance Saturday. Kansas State was the team that kind of got the second chance when Adrian Martinez went down and Will Howard came in relief. I'm positive TCU is the best team in the Big 12, but I'm also positive on any given Saturday, fully healthy Will Howard and King Felix on the other side and Daniel Green, like, they can beat TCU.
I mean, the weird thing about this game, and, you know, I'm also certain on the Adrian Martinez front, the reason he keeps getting hurt is because they threw him to the Wolves for 3 years at Nebraska.
Yeah.
They never protected him. I'm sure he's got lingering issues that he's going to have to deal with the rest of his life. But he gets hurt. Will Howard, though, coming in, I mean, we've been saying for a couple weeks now, are we sure that Will Howard's not the better option here?
Well, it's the red shirt thing. They want to preserve his red shirt. Which
I know. I get it. But are we sure?
Silly.
I think we're pretty sure at this point. Will Howard's been good
the
last couple times we've seen him, and they just destroyed Baylor. Maybe he heard what you said about him, Dan, a couple weeks back when you were like, Will Howard. Will Howard's been really freaking good.
No. What I said about him was, I am shocked to say that Will Howard has looked largely really, really good. Because if you've listened to his previous albums, some pretty shaky tracks. One of the very, very impressive growth stories over the course of this season and off season, obviously, that whether it was a Colin Klein influence, whether it was, you know, shifting things, whether it was increased competition with Adrian Martinez being present, pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's been a story. On the Baylor front, real quick, and then I want to talk about these other games. Yeah. Really bad. Probably their worst game of the season, maybe one of the worst in the Aranda era.
At
Nothing
home, by the
on
way.
offense.
Game was in Waco.
Nothing on offense.
No.
And not just because they only scored 3 points, but they just didn't have anything going in this one. They could not get any momentum. They also didn't play defense, as evidenced by a 28-3, or as evidenced by a 28-point loss. Interesting factoid on Baylor. I mean, just sometimes we come back to the preseason stuff that we did, and no one knew anything in the preseason. I mean, there are 1,000 teams that we missed on pretty badly. Mm-hmm. But the Baylor read early on was, okay, this over-under is 7.5. Why? Why is it 7.5? They're not going to hit that 7.5, Dan, unless they beat both TCU and Texas to close out the season, which feels unlikely. It is the Big 12. Weird things happen.
The rivalry. It's also a rivalry game called the rivalry that always is fraught with emotion and drama.
I get it, but that's
a
tall order.
It's Texas coming off of a 0 offensive touchdown performance in a big spot. So just never say never when it comes to Deverendo.
West Virginia 23, Oklahoma 20. Oklahoma might miss a bowl this year.
Yeah.
It might miss a bowl. Outside of Eric Gray, who had a monster game, over 200 yards rushing. He's up over 1,100 on the year. He has 2 games left. So he's having a year. But there is also an Oklahoma conversation that I think needs to happen.
Really?
Well, yeah. I mean, they had a really nice run against some Titans like UTEP, Kent State, and Nebraska.
Sure.
But then it went sideways, kind of in a hurry. And we know the guys who chart the numbers are still trying to figure out exactly what went wrong. Recruiting is still very strong. I'm not saying we need to talk about let's get rid of Brent Venables the program's going down. I'm not talking about any of that stuff, but recruiting strong, they'll be fine in that department. I just don't think we can assume at this point that just because everybody likes Brent Venables, because he's got some familiarity with Norman, and because he hung around Dabo Swinney all those years, that he is going to be a successful coach in Norman. I can't make that assumption at this point. They have not looked good the second half of the year.
It's probably a conversation for March or something, but as it relates to this specific matchup, the striking thing was West Virginia, down their starting quarterback in JT Daniels, turns to Garrett Green, who is not much of a passing threat. West Virginia loses the turnover battle 2-0. And they say to themselves in the second half, especially the fourth quarter, what if we just kind of ran straight at Oklahoma?
Yeah.
And they did with their quarterback. And Oklahoma flat out could not stop it. They were out footballed by West Virginia, possibly the worst team in this conference. Maybe that worst team is not West Virginia after yesterday. So, bigger picture, Oklahoma as a program, as a roster, I'm not going to say it was left in shambles, but there was a lot of change involved, given the departure of Caleb Williams, given the departure of Mario Williams, given the departure, obviously, of Lincoln Riley. And it's just never fair to fully judge a program under a first-year coach, great or terrible. It's just like we can say Mike Elko, maybe the best hire in college football, right? We can say that, given where Duke was last year.
Sure.
It's year one. It's year one, and I am perfectly optimistic that if recruiting is there, if Brent Venables and his experience at major programs, including at Oklahoma, is to be trusted, which it should be, I am positive Oklahoma, even in a more difficult conference, will be much, much better. Could not have seen a low this low, though. I just couldn't.
They lost 49-0 against their biggest rival.
Yep. Who just,
Not a good
once again, zero offensive points.
Zero offensive points. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a bad Oklahoma team. It is.
Yeah. All right. We'll see where it goes. Two other ones real quick. I don't know if you have anything to say about Oklahoma State winning over Iowa State or Texas Tech knocking off Kansas.
Spencer Sanders in relief, coming in late to win this game.
Yep.
The bum shoulder. I thought that was a cool story. I hope he continues to heal and feel
By
good
the
enough
way,
to play even more.
Also in that game, congrats to Xavier Hutchinson for
Yes.
Iowa State. Became the school leader for most career receptions, surpassing one, the Duke of Hazzard, Alan Lazard,
Of course.
former legend here on the podcast.
Yeah. No, Xavier Hutchinson, once again, be fun to see him in an offense.
Yeah.
Week to week. Yeah. Iowa State is just half a team, and I'm still going to put this in the context of what we've seen out of the Clones the last 20 years. If they're fielding a strong defense, that's better than most years.
Yeah.
The standard has improved, and they need to be better on offense. They just need to find more creative ways to be explosive and limit turnovers. But really nice gutty win for Oklahoma State, who really was not getting much done early on.
Let's head over to the Big Ten, Dan. This one comes to us from Eric, one of our longtime supporters who just signed up for footballers.com.
Nice.
Thank you, Eric. Speaking of all things Big Ten West death metal, nobody in the Big Ten West controls their own destiny. None of them. Nobody controls their own destiny. Iowa needs Illinois to lose. Purdue needs Iowa to lose. Both Illinois and Minnesota need Purdue to lose.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on out there, man?
Oh, man. So who does this rest on? Who is going to single-handedly decide the Big Ten West? So Iowa comfortably beats Wisconsin behind, what, 2 pick sixes?
Yeah. Right.
Is it all going to come down to the whims of Devin Mockabee? What is it? Is it going to all come down to Illinois not interfering with everybody's passes? What ultimately is going to be the most significant factor in who wins the Big Ten West? Is Caleb Johnson going to be really good again randomly? Something like that.
I don't know. I mean, here's where things stood.
Brendan Sullivan at Northwestern is going to be the X factor who is sometimes good and can sometimes complete an 8-yard throw downfield.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. So in the Big Ten West specifically, we had Purdue 31 over 24, or 31-24 over Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
We also had Minnesota 31-3 over Northwestern. They killed Northwestern.
Yes.
Oh my God, they absolutely killed Northwestern.
With Kaliak Manis, right?
Yeah, but he didn't have to do anything. It was all Mo Ibrahim, 178, 3 touchdowns on the ground. We had Iowa, as you mentioned. Iowa beats Wisconsin 24-10. Iowa had fewer than 150 yards of offense.
What an amazing bit of grammar from you right there. Awesome choice.
And forced Wisconsin into a situation where they had 3 turnovers and 0 offensive points.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly like they're setting the world on fire out there, but the interesting factoid that Eric passed along, I think, will make the last 2 weeks of this season very interesting to see who gets to that game in Indianapolis, presumably to play against either Ohio State or Michigan.
Polite disagree. I don't find it to be interesting at all. Because every time I watch 2 of these teams play against each other, it's like watching babies smeared jelly all over each other's faces. Somebody's going to have to clean up this mess, fellas. Somebody. Fellas. I don't know what that was. Good for Iowa for winning in very Iowa ways. I can always appreciate that. We talked about this. You, I think, liked Wisconsin going into this game. I forget,
just because I don't like Iowa. But
no, I know.
It wasn't for any specific reason.
It also sort of underscores the, why do we have divisions exactly? When the Big Ten championship game, the 2 best teams in the Big Ten are very clear. And to me, it's just one of them is Nebraska. They just need to get their act together. They just got to get in rhythms under Mickey Joseph. It's kind of a shame that these teams are going to fight for a spot in a game that is unbecoming of their season. But I guess good for the winning teams. Yeah, Illinois was ugly with the penalty. Did they have 12 penalties against Purdue?
They had 12 penalties.
5 PIs?
Yeah, 12 penalties.
Yeah.
Purdue is actually impressive on 2 fronts. They didn't allow a single sack. And this is an Illinois defense that we've talked about. Yeah, we talked about this defense all year, but kept Aiden O'Connell safe. And secondly, they were actually able to get a lot of pressure on Tommy DeVito. He couldn't take it. He couldn't handle the pressure in this one. And that, I think, is partly why, Purdue was successful here. They get bowl eligible for what it's worth.
Great.
They also finish out the season with Northwestern and at Indiana. So seems like things are going in a good direction for potentially an 8-win Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
They've also got the tiebreaker now over Illinois in the Big Ten West for whatever that's worth.
And Illinois has Michigan this coming week.
Yeah. As we jump over to some of the teams in the East, Ohio State won big 56-14 over Indiana. Michigan wins by 31 over Nebraska. Penn State blanked Maryland by a 30-0 score, and Michigan State 27, Rutgers 21. Dan, talk about an offensive explosion.
Yeah, I didn't watch a large chunk of any of these games because they involve teams like Nebraska and Rutgers and Indiana. I watched some of Ohio State, Indiana. That got out of hand quickly. The Michigan score, it looked like Nebraska was sort of within striking distance. It was 14-3 for a while, but it was not ever that close.
By the way, nice little front door cover.
That's
very loud.
Sorry, dogs. Blake Corum, who I'm still yelled at by our friend Ben Golliver, even as I wear the shirt of his GOAT podcast, the greatest of all talk. Just an absolute warrior. Just absolutely the most, maybe the most consistent running back in terms of just tough yardage and carrying the hopes and dreams of an offense on his shoulders, especially in the red zone with some of those struggles. J.J. McCarthy wasn't especially impressive in this one, but it was the defense and maybe an all-time failed hurdle situation for Nebraska.
Yeah, it was bad.
I watched that. I watched Michigan absolutely obliterate the lower innards of a Nebraska ball carrier. And it's not even like, I understand why you're laughing because it's so absurd, the decision and the outcome. But as I watch that, I also think that is generational fertility at risk. And that's rough. That was and I think he also came down on his head. And so, and we'll get to Will Shipley, who had one of the most incredible hurdles of the day, if not the most incredible hurdle of the day. So you are quite literally taking your future into somebody else's helmet, and hope that dude is all right for Nebraska.
Oh my God, yeah. No, that was, I mean, a curious decision at best. Hope everybody's okay. Just sort of laughing.
Big guy, little guys, everything.
At the ridiculousness of it, yeah. And very quickly, we'll move on here, but Penn State 30-0 over Maryland. Penn State's defense, I know you were all over Penn State in this game.
Tried to tell you.
Yeah, you tried to tell me. Penn State's defense was suffocating. Maryland had 134 yards, Dan. They just were not good in this game. And Penn State's defense came to play. Again, saw a little bit of Drew Aller late in the game. I guess this thing's just not going to happen now. I've been trying to speak it into existence all year. It's going to be Clifford. It's just Clifford the rest of the way. That's the way this thing's going to go. It's going to be Aller next year. Just it's time for folks like me to just fess up, come to grips with reality, and understand the fact that 2022 is going to be all about Sean Clifford.
I am trying to remember how to say Drew's last name. I think it's like allergy, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's allergy without the G. Sean Clifford was fine. It was the rushing attack. It was the defense that was completely suffocating. I don't know if there's something about back half of the season, Maryland, like as the clock gets closer to midnight, they turn from like, hey, this party's great to anybody got PCP? And that's what it looked like in State College yesterday. That's what James Franklin does, aside from push-ups, when he gets his own unsportsmanlike penalty or whatever it's called on the sideline. That's what he does. I think that's what he does. He's shut out Mike Loxley in Maryland, 2 of the last 3 or 4 years, something like that now?
Yeah.
That's it.
Crazy. All right. Let's go over to the ACC. Some weird stuff going on in the ACC. Boston College, 21. NC State, 20. BC with a weird upset. Yeah. North Carolina, Wake Forest in a shootout, 36-34. We had Florida State destroying Syracuse, 38-3. We had Clemson knocking off Louisville. Malik Cunningham hurt his shoulder. Mm-hmm. He left. He had to exit. There went that bet for me. Thank you very much. We had Miami with their 4-star freshman, Ja'Cory Brown, 35-14 over Georgia Tech. Duke wins 24-7 over Virginia Tech. And Pitt rolls one up by 30 over the Virginia Cavaliers, Dan. I want to start with the BC game.
Okay.
The BC game. Emmett Moorhead, your redshirt freshman, threw a touchdown pass, 14 seconds left, gave BC the dub on the road at North Carolina State. It was just a second career start. Mm-hmm. With a very limited sampling of data, he does seem pretty good. He seems pretty good. And Zay Flowers is happy when he's got a good quarterback to throw to him. He had a big day, 130, 2 touchdowns through the air. MJ Morris may need a little bit of seasoning. Maybe it's a little bit of seasoning.
He's a freshman.
Still young. But the NC State offense in particular didn't do a damn thing after the first quarter. And so BC was able to get the win here.
One of the interesting things about this game is both offenses were largely so bad in the second half that it just afforded Boston College so many possessions to try and get things right. There were so many 3 plays, 9 yards, 104 off the clock, right? So Boston College was not great in this game, but the opportunities were there to eventually become competent. And has Zay Flowers been a Boston College Eagle for 14 years? He has been there. I thought he was in the NFL.
I'll be honest. Same. I thought he was in the NFL.
I think he's either their all-time... He has to be all-time everything at this point for BC. Was he there with Tyler Murphy when they upset USC in 2014? He may have been. That might have been his redshirt year. Incredible day for BC, which, by the way, was looking like, with Phil Jerkovic before he got hurt, was looking like a bit... they just lost to UConn. A bit of a 1-2-3 Cancun team. And so I am holding my Jeff Hafley stock, Ty. I'm holding on to it because there is fight in these Eagles. I don't know what it's going to look like moving forward, but there is belief there. And the ACC is always random and weird enough that an occasionally competent, plucky team can win 7 or 8.
North Carolina 36, Wake Forest 34.
Yeah.
Drake Maye, man. Drake Maye.
Drake Maye is what he is he's an unusually hot heater at a table in Vegas. He is, Ty shot 74. And you're like, that's who he is now. was like, no, this is not what freshmen are supposed to look like.
He's so good. He's a 5-1. He's at 5-1 right now to win the Heisman.
Oh. Yeah, he's incredible. His ability to quickly see the field or buy himself time and make throws on the run at impossible angles. They're way too advanced for his age.
Yeah,
and
he's great. He's really, really
North
good.
Carolina with Josh Downs, a defense that has ascended to problematic but not catastrophic with that, essentially, the game-sealing interception. Was it a linebacker or safety who cut across the middle of the field to intercept Sam Hartman late in that game that I think set up the game-winning field goal? North Carolina is a team of winners. They find ways to win games in close situations. We saw it against Duke, and they have now clinched the division. They're going to take on Clemson in the they clinched the Coastal, excuse me. And ACC championship game is set.
Yep, Clemson will be going there as well. Clemson sort of crock-potted Louisville. Sort of. They were really good on the ground with Will Shipley from Lupa.
Still sloppy with the turnovers, but yeah.
They clinched the Atlantic. Let's talk quickly about Miami and Ja'Carri Brown. 4-star freshman. He's out of Georgia. Got the start for Miami. Looked really good.
Ja'Carri,
excuse me.
Ja'Carri, driving that Miami vehicle. Yeah.
14-19, 136, 3 touchdowns. He's got a good arm. He's got good speed. Ran for 87 on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
The Canes need to beat either Pitt or Clemson to qualify for a bowl game. Which is a crazy place to be, given all the hype that Mario Cristobal came in with. But that's just where we're at. So 35-14 is a nice win and is a good start for Ja'Carri Brown, Dan. But still some work to do if they want to get to a bowl game. Cameron Kinchens, by the way, dude alert for the Canes. 3 picks in this one, including a 99-yard pick 6.
Ty, when Ja'Carri Brown comes along with the strength to carry on and will cast Miami fans' fears aside so that they know they can survive, even when they felt like hope is gone, look inside yourself, Miami fans, and be strong. And you'll finally see that the truth is that Ja'Carri Brown lies in you. There's a hero.
What was that?
That was Mariah Carey's Hero.
I know what it was.
Yeah, I don't know. Look, they went 9 quarters and 4 overtimes without scoring a touchdown, and they scored 35 points, not thanks fully to the offense, but he seems promising. Jalen Knighton hasn't been playing a lot. I don't know if it was fumble issues or whatever it was. He comes in and he runs strong. The defense looks good. I don't think they can run a full offense with Ja'Carri Brown quite yet, but that's true of most freshmen. Again, once it's Drake Maye screwing everybody over with looking this good, this young.
He's good.
So
he's really good.
Good for Miami, and a win is good. Miami won, and that helps.
By the way, the Drake Maye post-game comments.
Yeah.
He is a fast talker. He may be the fastest talker in college football.
Okay.
It's like a podcast on 1.75x.
Mm-hmm.
It just goes.
Yeah.
He's very good, though.
I'm pro Drake.
I'm very pro Drake.
Yeah.
Love the Drake. Okay. In the SEC, we've got Georgia 45-19 over Mississippi State. Georgia clinched a spot in the SEC title game. This was like 17-12 at half, but then, of course, the Dogs pull away. They outscored Mississippi State 28-7 in the second half. We had Auburn 13, Texas A&M 10, Dan.
Oh, God. Yeah.
You sent me a message bright and early this morning that you honestly can't believe Texas A&M. I can't either. It's incredible.
This is an Auburn team with an interim coach in Carnell Cadillac Williams, with a quarterback who wouldn't start probably for any other team in the SEC, would he? I mean, he might start for A&M. An offense that's been dreadful, a defense that's been pretty bad all year. And my note coming into this game is even Jimbo couldn't screw this up. If the flu was done wreaking havoc on the A&M roster with Devin Achane and Evan Stewart and presumably Connor Wegman, who did get the start in this game, that they would string together enough semi-successful drives to win it 17-10 or something, 23-10. I don't know. Granted, not 25. Let's not go crazy. But a completely inept A&M offense and an Auburn team that did just enough. And by the way, I know it's sort of on the periphery of all of this, but Auburn fired their coach a few weeks ago. They've been largely dreadful this year. And Auburn fans pack that stadium to the gills.
Yeah, man.
Like that's if you want to know what the difference is with the SEC, and I don't like all the hyperbole coming out like, oh, whatever. It's the SEC. This is real football. This is man ball. It just means more, all that stuff. It's pretty silly and cartoonish. You can look at a Stanford game. You can look at a UCLA game. You can look at a down Iowa State situation. You can, and I don't know why I'm using Iowa State, but you go elsewhere. Fired coach, team looking dreadful. You're not packing the stands.
No.
It's an incredible sight to see how into Auburn fans are.
I just appreciate the fact that Cadillac Williams went with a modified Navy offense here and said, Robbie Ashford, maybe we'll just run it. How about we just run it? How about we run it 55 times for 270? Make us into a running team and win this game. That's what they did.
By the way, Cadillac Williams has some juice behind him when a microphone is placed in front of his face.
Oh, yeah.
He's great.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time. All right, we got Vandy knocking off Kentucky. Kentucky might be making Cancun plans.
And by the way, Kentucky, a ranked Kentucky team, despite all of their recent struggles, the playoff committee has said to themselves, come on, Kentucky. You got to be a ranked win for so many teams. We got to keep you in here.
Not anymore. Vandy ended its 26-game losing streak. I guess against
SEC?
conference opponents. Yeah, by knocking off Kentucky on the road. Their defense was superb.
Mm-hmm.
Given the fact that they were giving up 37-ish points per game the previous 10 weeks, 4 sacks, couple tackles for loss, really good in the red zone here. Ray Davis, Mike Rice for Vandy had great days on the ground, combined for like 250 and 2 touchdowns.
Oh, Mike Wright was incredible.
Yeah, future first rounder Will Levis, only 109 yards passing. If not for Christopher Rodriguez, Dan, on the ground, Kentucky wouldn't really have any offense to speak of coming out of this one. So 24-20, kind of an embarrassing loss for Kentucky, but a big one for Vandy. Good one for Clark Lee. Good for him.
Yeah, Notre Dame adjacent.
Notre Dame adjacent, that's right. Tennessee, 66, Mizzou 24. I think we can put to bed any of the hopes and dreams that some out there have had about Tennessee being demoralized, dispirited, looking past.
Yeah, it's just Georgia. That's it.
Opponents after the Georgia game. No, it's just Georgia. The Vols absolutely steamrolled Mizzou. I was talking to you on the phone. I was in the car. You're like, yeah, they're calling timeouts. They're just trying to. Yeah. They're trying to run up as many points and yards.
Joe
as
Milton had 35 yards in attempt. Yeah.
724 yards here for the Vols. They are in pretty good shape to get to the playoff now, especially with Oregon going down. And to close things out in the SEC, we had Florida 38-6 over South Carolina. They ran for 374 and 3 touchdowns on the ground.
Yes. Yeah, this one I didn't watch a lot of because I started watching it and Florida just took it to them. To be fair, on the Tennessee-Mizzou game, I think that game was 28-24 or something close to that. And Brady Cook had a bunch of really impressive runs. Mizzou was moving the ball on this Tennessee defense. And then Tennessee hit the NOS. And then they're like, we are going to keep pounding you downfield. And nobody's going to come near Jalen Hyatt. And Brew McCoy had his. And Tennessee was playing to get to 100. They really, truly were. And I think the spread was something like 21. And we went back and forth on this one. You may have taken Mizzou or you may have come to the,
I took Mizzou.
The bright side.
I took all the wrong teams this week.
Yeah, we all have those weeks. But yeah, Tennessee putting themselves in a very nice position to be looked at favorably after the year is done. Because who do they end with? South Carolina and Vandy?
It's very, very straightforward for Tennessee. And like I talked about on the preview show, just because now both games are on the road for whatever that's worth, but the way Tennessee's playing, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Tennessee is weirdly in an advantageous spot after losing to Georgia because now they don't have to worry about going to that SEC title game and losing to somebody. I mean, they can just keep plowing teams and put themselves, I think, in a pretty good situation to make it through into that Final Four.
I mean, you could be very specific and say now they don't have to worry about getting to the SEC title game and again throttling LSU.
But still,
Yeah, no, Harold Perkins wears purple and gold, so that's always something. But
always a chance.
Yeah. No, it's a nice position where you can sit back and let dominoes fall ahead of you.
All right, 2 other groupings of teams to get through. We'll go to your Pac-12 conference. We already talked about UCLA and Oregon and what happened there.
Mm-hmm.
But Utah runs one up on Stanford. Tavion Thomas getting healthy just in time for Oregon next week. 42-7. Oregon State shuts down Cal. 38-10, the final score here. Cal had 150 yards of offense, something like that. Wasn't great. Wazoo wins 28-18 over Arizona State. 3 touchdowns for Nakia Watson.
Yep.
And earlier in the week, what was this, Friday night?
Yes.
USC 55, Colorado 17. USC with a little bit of a front door cover. Really, the story of this game, though, was Travis Dye.
Oh.
Travis Dye, the scary leg injury, goes down in the second quarter, gets carted off the field. It seems as if his season/career likely over. Sad to see that for a guy who's had a pretty good year and definitely had a really big impact for this USC team. But USC does win by a healthy margin here by 38, 55-17 over the Buffs. The Buffs, for what it's worth, we got a pick on our Thursday live show.
Yeah.
What was it? Over 6.5 first half points for Colorado?
Correct. Yep.
Didn't
Sat
hit.
there.
Only had three.
But I think at 3 in the first quarter. So you're like, all
3 in
right,
the first quarter.
on pace to flirt.
Yeah.
Jordan Addison in limited action was back. And yeah, the Travis Dye thing, even though he left Oregon for another Pac-12 major program, he was a really fun player to watch for me as an Oregon fan, and just absolute killer and bummer to see him injured the way he was, and really cool to see all of his teammates come out and support him as he was carted off. So yeah, hate to see it.
Elsewhere, Notre Dame 35, Navy 32. Notre Dame got off to a quick start. They led 35-13 at half. Thereabouts.
And then
they scored 0 points in the second half, Dan. 0. Big old goose egg in the second half.
Disorder! Right when you thought I was done with Surge.
Oh, my God. No
the world
points.
says to you,
No!
disorder. Yeah.
No points in the second half. Navy pulls to within 3 points with 1 minute and 21 seconds left in this game. And as we talked about here, kind of off air a little bit yesterday, Notre Dame tried to give this one away. They really tried to give this one away. I warned you about this one. Don't fall into the trap, Notre Dame, after a big win. Especially against Navy, I don't see it. But so yeah, Notre Dame started off hot, couldn't really run it, so it was Drew Pine. We saw Pine time in this one.
He did hit some really nice passes.
He did, including that awesome catch by Braden Lenzy.
Yes.
Which might be, he should get a doodle alert. He's really hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
This season, his entire career, if we're being frank. Maybe the catch of the year deserves a doodle alert just because of it. One of those wraparound catches where he reaches around the defender, catches it on his back. Did something which you don't see with a lot of those style catches. Wasn't good enough to just sort of pin it to the defender. Somehow whirled the ball around and got it
Grabbed
in front
it from
of him.
around him, yeah.
Which is a ballsy maneuver, and it worked. It was Harlem Globetrotters-esque for Braden Lenzy, a nice 38-yard touchdown catch in the first quarter. Notre Dame does get the dub. So 35-32. Pine had a pretty good game, 4 touchdowns. UCF wins over Tulane, 38-31. I was in the car listening to bits and pieces of this one. The Tulane radio commentary crew sounded demoralized in the first half.
Yeah.
Demoralized at the way that this thing went. But Tulane lost only by 7. It was one of those deals where UCF led wire to wire. Your boy John Rice Plumlee,
there it is,
pretty good, had 3 touchdowns in totality, but not a great game for Tulane. Tulane's going to come out of this one feeling like they left points on the board. Again, 38-31. Marshall does beat App State 28-21. We had Cincinnati by 2 over ECU, 27-25. Any other games that jumped out to you, Daniel?
Yes, San Diego State scored 43 points in regulation against a decent team.
Wow.
Jalen Maiden, the transfer from, I think, Houston?
Okay.
By Mississippi State or something like that. That's of note to me. Boise State hammered Nevada, I believe, in the Mountain West. I watched only chunks here and there of Notre Dame Navy on a muted TV. It seemed that Navy discovered they could blitz their corners at Drew Pine, and Drew Pine said to himself, "Are they allowed to do that?
Yeah.
That doesn't seem fair." Notre Dame could not figure out Navy and the blitz, but you walk away with the win. But that was a weird stretch of game. But yeah, good for Drew Pine and Notre Dame for pulling it out, I guess. Otherwise, I would argue one of the most, because you used the word demoralizing, one of the most demoralizing ways to watch your team lose, and I'm an expert at this after last night, but not this specific method, is when you feel like you have your opponent bottled up in a big moment, and their quarterback says, "What if I just scamper for 7 on 3rd and 6? What if I scamper for 11 on 3rd and 9?" And John Rice Plumlee and his legs, it's so demoralizing because Tulane did so many good things in this game, winning things in this game. But when you can't stop the run, when you can't stop a mobile quarterback, you can't do much. And so good for UCF, who is now in position to find themselves in a New Year's Six game once again with their 3rd straight coach. Yes,
Yep.
Josh Heupel and Scott Frost did so, and now here comes Gus Malzahn and UCF. So
Absolutely.
What else did you mention? You mentioned Marshall winning. I thought that was nice for them, for the Sun Belt in general.
Cincy game was very close.
Cincy game was very close. I did not watch much of it, so I'm not going to pretend like I know much about it. That's on my list to watch early on in the week. Fresno, I think it's Jalen Moreno Cropper. He's ridiculous. One of the best receivers that we're not talking about. They score, I think, 40 points against UNLV, but it's UNLV. Otherwise, the following teams, by the way. Do I have the sound? I don't even... Yeah, there it is. Following teams are bowl eligible. UConn, UConn, they beat Liberty, did they not?
They beat them. That's a nice win. Arkansas couldn't beat Liberty.
They could not. Pitt, thanks to those 2 pick sixes in the first 16 seconds against Virginia, they are now bowl eligible. SMU, JMU, which, by the way, had a very comfortable win yesterday against
Can
ODU.
JMU go to a bowl? Did we get past this yet, or are they still like having to sit out because they're a new entrant?
Eligible.
Okay.
But I think they need some kind of waiver.
Sign the waiver. Give them the
get
waiver.
Houston, Wazoo, Iowa, Marshall, and Florida. Bunch
Beautiful.
of up-and-coming teams. Scrappy. With the gumption.
We had a bunch of calls that came through to the Reverb line at 408-VERBAL-1. Our guy Shay, our chief Reverb engineer Shay, cut these up very early this morning. Appreciate, as ever, his hard work, his stick-to-itiveness, waiting for the right call to come through to piece it together in the right amount of detail. There are some bangers in this set of reverbs. Have a listen.
Currently explaining to my wife why SmellTiesHair.com is on my search history.
Of course.
So, thanks, guys.
Hey, this is Mike from the mean streets of Easton.
This is Wes calling live from San Juan, Puerto Rico.
This is Dominic from Phoenix, and I got 2 things to say about my LSU Tigers. 1, win your clunkers. They did it. 2, Harold Perkins, absolute animal.
Talk about winning your clunkers. My goodness, LSU, that was a clunker of a clunker. But a win is a win is a win. I'll take it. Go Tigers.
Hey guys, just calling in from Lexington, Kentucky, where we so generously donated Vandy their first conference win in 3 years. I guess the football team saw the basketball team was playing the other night and decided they could pack it in for the season. Well, see y'all next year. Go Cats.
I think there might be something wrong with the bottom line on my TV because it says that Kentucky lost to Vanderbilt at home. Wait, that actually happened? All right, well, I'll just go get another pina colada.
I just had a nomination for a Dude Alert. Trey Benson just ran all over Syracuse. 18 touches for 163 yards, making Florida State football fun again. Go Noles.
This is Connor, who writes the solid slate for you. I'm sorry I ever asked you to lock up Baylor. Please don't do it again, Ty. Oh, so much pain.
As all of us BC fans have been saying, it's about time to extend Jeff Hafley. He is the prince who was promised, and quite frankly, to be honest with y'all, I'm just glad that BC remembered how to run the victory formation. Go Eagles.
Ty, this is the TCU Horned Frogs. I know you say we're broken up, but I see you watching our Instagram stories late at night. We see you driving by the stadium. Come on back.
Ooh.
It's okay.
Just want you to know, I got a pocket full of grads from the rent, baby. Full eligible. UCONN. UConn.
Just wanted to call about that tough Husky loss on Saturday. Oh, wait. No, that was a tough Duck loss. Say goodbye to that Austin home winning streak. Say goodbye to that number 6 college football playoff ranking. Say goodbye to the 40-point offensive scoring streak. Say goodbye to the Bo Nix Heisman. 4th and 1.
I think it cut off a little bit early.
I think so too.
I will fix that in the final version.
I thought Chrome crashed.
No, we had a great
Currently explaining to my
is really like
Try
a
this
group
again.
of plane crash survivors who resort to cannibalism.
4th and 1, a minute and a half left. Bo Nix is begging the coach to come back in. Lanning does not call timeout, and they fail. How long is that going to hurt?
Pac-12 is really like the group of plane crash survivors who resort to cannibalism when there's plenty of pretzels left. USC survived the Pac-12 blood week. Fight on.
You know, my beloved Hogs put up a great performance to make it close with LSU, and it's tough being a Razorback fan sometimes, but, you know, I do have 85,950,000 reasons why it's better to be a Hawks fan than an A&M fan.
There you go. All right. For those watching live, had a little bit of technical difficulty here, but kudos to our guy Shay for putting those together. We appreciate, as ever, folks calling into 408 Verbal 1 Dan. Shall we do the Dude Alerts segment of this broadcast?
You take so much care to say, Dan, shall we do some dudes? And not say it.
That's what you said last week. I said, shall we do the Dude Alerts segment?
I know. But I'm just saying, you made the effort to be clear.
Who are the dudes?
Harry Perky, a.k.a. Harold Perkins, everything everywhere for LSU. Michael Penix. How about Carlton Marshall? Marshall? I think that's how you pronounce it. The Troy linebacker who set the all-time tackles record. He did in 5 years. He had 22 tackles yesterday against Army. That is a dude. John Rice Plumlee. Bert Emanuel, the Central Michigan quarterback tie, ran for 293 yards as a quarterback. That's pretty good in a winning effort against Buffalo. Ty, that's my hot take. That's good. Trey Benson completely stomped Syracuse on leading the way to a 38-3 win for the Noles. Zay Flowers, once again, we mentioned before. How about Kendre Miller?
Yeah,
just pacing the TCU offense. I know you're up nights, just as the caller said, just looking at the Instagram stories of TCU, seeing them thrive out there, hair flowing in the wind.
I'm at the point in the relationship where I'm just happy for them.
Yeah.
I'm happy for them. I do look at the stories. They caught me. I look at the stories.
Yeah.
I'm not actively trying to get back together. I'm past it. I'm on to other tumultuous college football relationships. But yeah. I'm happy for them. I hope they're doing well.
Yeah. And as for the gentleman making fun of Texas A&M, could be your team someday. It could always be your team, but right now it is Texas A&M. And I have a feeling next season you're about to get a lot of really cool, feel-good stories out of Texas A&M when a bunch of cashiers and plumbers and, architecture interns are starting for this Texas A&M team because so many people have transferred. He's an Uber driver. Like, he's going to drive his Corolla after the game to take people home, and he's the starting defensive end. So you have that to look forward to.
What are the odds that we get one of those stories on, like, the SEC network? Like, Jimbo Fisher had to have an open tryout for ...
Oh, my God. Usually it's for, like, a long snapper or a field goal kicker, a place kicker. Usually it's not for inside linebacker or left guard or something like that. But if it'll happen anywhere, especially after, Moose Muhammad got suspended for wearing an arm sleeve per Moose Muhammad, could happen at A&M.
Could happen at A&M. All right, that does it for your Week 11 reaction podcast. We appreciate you downloading, listening, supporting the podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe. If you have not done so yet, we would appreciate it.
Yes.
Tell your friends to subscribe as well. We're always trying to grow the Verballerhood. Verballers.com is where you can go to get access to our super secret college football society. It is growing. It is a great place to spend your Saturday afternoons as you are watching games. Certainly as we push into bowl season. I mean, absolutely as we push into coaching carousel season, that will be the place to be.
Yeah.
We would encourage you to be there. We're not necessarily breaking news. I'm not saying we're breaking news. We're giving you, the lay of the land here, the deep underworld of the coaching search. We're not getting, we don't do that. It's not our beat. But we have plenty of folks in the Verballerhood, especially on our Discord, who always have the radars up for any kind of interesting things.
Yes.
It's a great place to be. We would urge you to go on out to verballers.com. Check it out. You can sign up for just $5.
We also do Sunday evening long distance dedications on Discord at like 1 a.m. Eastern. Ty and I get on there as old school FM DJs.
We still want to do that. We have not done that.
Green. We
want to do that. We want to go in the voice chat.
A lot of Shaka Khan. Yeah.
Randomly and just do an FM radio show.
Yeah.
And that's it. With no warning. We're not posting. We're not telling anybody. Just whoever is in the Discord at that moment in time will get the long distance dedications, the FM radio show.
That's true. 73 degrees in Hattiesburg. All right. That's all I have, Ty.
For that guy over there, my beloved co-host, Dan Rubenstein. For myself, Ty Hildenbrandt. For the dozens of you, thousands of you listening, watching at home, thank you as always for your support. We'll talk to you all soon. Stay solid.
Peace.